Have you ever felt the sudden pull of something you couldn't explain? Like the world is nudging you towards something meant only for you. That's how it started for me, standing alone in the forest, miles away from anyone or anything familiar. It was supposed to be a normal hike, a chance to clear my head. But as I wandered deeper into the woods, I felt it, a strange sensation, almost magnetic, drawing me away from the trail. At first I ignored it. I told myself it was just my imagination. But then I saw it. A glimpse, almost too quick to register. A door half hidden among the trees, standing tall in the underbrush, where nothing should have been. It wasn't just out of place. It was wrong, like the forest had bent around it in ways that didn't make sense. I walked closer, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It wasn't like the other strange things people claimed to see in the woods. It wasn't a shadow or a trick of the light. The door was real, standing solid and immovable in the clearing. There were no walls around it, no building, just the door, standing upright, as though it had always been there, waiting. And it was waiting. For me. I stopped just short of it, suddenly aware of the silence around me. The forest had gone deathly still. No birds, no wind, nothing. The air felt thick, as though the world had paused to see what I would do next. I don't know what possessed me to reach out and touch it, but I did. My fingertips grazed the wood, and that's when I felt it. Something far worse than I could have imagined. The door creaked open, and everything around me shifted. Behind it wasn't the forest. It wasn't the world I knew. It was somewhere else. An expanse of darkness that seemed to stretch forever, swallowing the light in its depths. It wasn't empty, though. Something moved within it, something alive. At first it was subtle, like the gentle roll of waves in the ocean. But as I stood there frozen, it became clearer. Shapes twisting and writhing in the dark. Shadows with form, but no substance. Faces flickering in and out of focus, human but wrong, distorted in ways that made my stomach churn. And then, as I stared, one of them stepped forward. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and thin, with limbs too long and movements that seemed disconnected from the rest of the world. It didn't have a face, not exactly, just a void where eyes should be, where a mouth should open to speak. Yet somehow, I knew it was watching me. It didn't say anything. It didn't have to. The cold chill that wrapped around my spine told me everything. Whatever it was old, ancient even, and it had been waiting. I stepped back, my throat dry, my body screaming to run. But the moment I moved, the figure followed. Its steps were slow, deliberate, as if it knew I had nowhere to go. The door behind it began to creak wider, the blackness inside pulsing with life. With things that should not exist, my mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. None of this was possible. I had wandered off the trail, sure, but this was something else entirely. I felt the pull again, stronger this time. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something far deeper, a tugging in my chest that urged me to step through the door, to follow the thing into the endless dark. I could hear voices now, faint whispers curling around my thoughts. Familiar, though I couldn't place them. Come closer. The words were soft, almost kind, but laced with something sharp underneath, a promise of something I couldn't quite grasp. And then I saw them. More faces, hovering just beyond the threshold. They were human, but not. Distorted and twisted like reflections in shattered glass. Some were frozen in expressions of terror. Others seemed to plead silently, their mouths moving but no sound escaping. One of them, A man with hollow eyes and dirt-caked skin mouthed the words, "Don't come back." A sound, low and guttural, rumbled from the void behind the door as if something far larger and far more ancient stirred within it. My stomach turned and I stumbled backward, my heart racing. The figure in the doorway tilted its head, watching me with an almost curious tilt. I wanted to turn and run, but the trees behind me had changed. Where there had been a clear path just moments ago, now there was only thick fog, impenetrable and heavy, swallowing the forest in its wake. I had no way out. The thing stepped closer, its arms stretching toward me, long fingers reaching for my chest. I scrambled back, the weight of the silence pressing against me, crushing the air from my lungs. The shadows behind it pulsed, like they were alive, breathing in the darkness. And then, just as the figure reached the threshold, just as its cold fingers brushed the edge of the door frame, it stopped. The door began to close, inch by agonizing inch, until the dark was no more than a sliver. The figure stood motionless, its eyes, or lack of them, locked on me as the gap between us grew smaller and smaller. Finally, with a heavy thud, the door shut. The forest came back in an instant. The air was warm again. The leaves rustled with the wind, birds sang in the distance, and the trail was suddenly right where it had always been. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the door hadn't really gone, that it was still waiting, somewhere just beyond my sight, waiting for me to find it again. And the worst part, I know I will.